Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel BandysBooks, and today we're here to talk about my May TBR. As per usual, there's a lot going on in May and I want to participate in everything, but I had to limit it to 3 different themes. So I have 3 things going on my TBR, each of them pretty interesting, and I have a lot of really great books picked out. So first of all, here in the United States, May is AAPI Heritage Month, which stands for Asian American Pacific Islander. And so to celebrate that, I have a lot of books on my TBR this month that are by Asian authors. As I always like to say, I do try to read diversely throughout the year, so just because I'm celebrating the specific Heritage Month does not mean that I won't read Asian authors throughout the rest of the year as well. I just like to celebrate groups when there is a specific Heritage Month going on. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month, Mental Health May. I think this is such an important topic. As an adult, I have struggled with depression at periods of my life, so I personally think it's an important topic, but I also have seen what the other adults and people in my life have struggled with. So I think normalizing mental health is incredibly important, and one of the ways we can do that is reading books where characters are struggling a bit with their mental health, or not necessarily struggling, but like dealing with their mental health, however we want to talk about it. But I think that normalizing it is great, and so I'll be making sure to read a few books that deal with the topic of mental health. Additionally, I'll be participating in Misery May, which is hosted by Gem of Books and Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. Misery May is a readathon that was inspired by Thomas Hardy and is all about miserable books. If you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that I love emotional, dark, and deep books. So this is a readathon I feel like was designed for me. I've picked out a handful of miserable books, and I think I'm even gonna give Thomas Hardy a go. Got a lot of books to talk about, so let's jump into it, and we're gonna go through this list pretty quickly. We're gonna start with some ARCs that I have that I wanna prioritize for this month. First up, we have Deep as the Sky, Red as the Sea by Rita Cheng Pig. This is a story about a Chinese legendary pirate queen and what she has to go through to try and save her fleet from the forces that are allied against them. This is right up my alley. I've been loving pirate stories lately. I can't wait to get into this one. Then we have Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. This is a story of a Korean American family whose life is upended when their father goes missing. I am here for this. It looks so good. I know that Angie Kim is a popular author, and you'll actually see her popping up one other time on this TBR. Then we have House of Doors by Booker shortlisted author Tan Tuan Eng. This is a novel about an author and his wife set in 1920s Penang, Malaysia, and it explores themes of love, betrayal, and morality. This sounds amazing. I love the cover of this. I am so excited for this book. And then we have Late Bloomers by Deepa Varadarajan. This is a story of an Indian American family. We have a couple who's been married for 36 years and they decide to call it quits. They're getting a divorce, and as they blunder through single life and dating and all sorts of things, their family is rocked to the core. I think this is going to be humorous. I think it's going to be touching and emotional. I think it's a lot about finding oneself after, decades spent with someone else, learning who you are as an individual instead of as a couple. Sounds like it's going to be so good. And then we have Mammoths at the Gate by Nevo. This is book number 4 in the Singing Hills cycle. I just recently got into this series of books after I saw it mentioned on Book Hunt. I'm going to tag her video below talking about it. And we have a similar taste in books, so I thought I would give this series a shot. I raced through the first 3 books in the series and then happened to see book number 4 listed on NetGalley, so I'm very excited to read this. It is a Hugo Award-winning series. Even though I am reading them in chronological order, you can read them in whatever order you want, and it has no impact to the story whatsoever. This book starts when Cleric Chi returns home after 3 years with kind of mixed emotions, joy and sorrow. Their mentor, Cleric Thane, has died, and not everyone wants to let them rest. Sounds super good. Like I said, I've been enjoying this series so far, and I anticipate that I will enjoy this next installment of it as well. And after that, I have another 4th book in a series, and that's Murder and Mammon by Mia P. Manansala. That is book number 4 in Tita Rosie's Kitchen series. This is a series of cozy mysteries, and it is anchored in Filipino culture. I actually have an entire recipe and review of the first book in the series up here called Arsenic and Adobo if you want to check it out. Of course, the police get involved, but Leela can't just leave it up to them. They've messed up too many times before, so you know what's going to happen. She's going to investigate. I expect that this is going to be just as good as the first 3 books in the series. I'm very much looking forward to a somewhat cozy mystery with some darker themes and a lot of Filipino food and culture. I can't wait to dive into this one. I'm so happy I got an ARC of it. This book starts when the Calendar Crew, aka Leela's godmothers or ninangs, have opened up a laundromat. They're super excited about their new concept and they're celebrating, but then the body of one of their nieces is dropped on the doorstep along with a ominous note. And then we're gonna take it to middle grade. I don't read middle grade books all that often, but this one sounded really interesting. I was drawn in by the cover, and then when I read the description, I was like, oh, I wanna give this a try. And that's The Very Unfortunate Wish of Melody Yoshimura by Waka T. Brown. This is a middle grade novel based on Japanese folklore. Melody's parents are super overprotective and overbearing, and when she pushes back against them, they cite their reasoning as this Japanese folklore of a demon named Amanjuku. As Melody turns 12, she wishes for more independence and freedom, and after that wish, Amanjuku actually shows up. I love stories that incorporate cultural folkloric elements, and I've been enjoying the handful of middle grade books that I've read in the last couple months, so hopefully this one's gonna be just as good as the last ones. After that, I have Wednesday's Child by Yi Yoon Lee. I read Book of Goose last month and really enjoyed it. So when I saw Yi Yoon Lee pop up in NetGalley, I made sure to request. This is a short story collection about loss, aging, and the strangeness of contemporary life. Sounds amazing. I am really looking forward to diving into it. And the final EARC that I have on the list is The Isle of Antioch by Amin Malouf. He is born in Beirut, Lebanon, and though he is a native speaker of Arabic, most Lebanese people also speak French, and he happens to write his books in French. This was translated from French to English by Natasha Lehrer. This book follows a character named Alec who settles on a remote island in the Atlantic Ocean. He has very little contact with his next door neighbor, who is the author of a cult classic novel. The world is on the brink of nuclear apocalypse when a gang of otherworldly protectors swoops in and interferes with the US presidency and starts to cure illness. Sounds really quirky. I'm not sure what to think. Okay, so those are the books that are on my NetGalley to read list this month. Now to get into my physical books. So first we're gonna talk about a handful of books that I selected just for Misery May. There's only 4 of them. And then I have some other books in my TBR that might qualify for Misery May, but I'm just not really sure. So I do want to say that first of all, for Misery May, I'm gonna be attempting to read Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. I've talked about this once or twice, but when I was in high school, I was in advanced English, and my teacher assigned us Tess of D'Urbervilles and then assigned us Jude the Obscure at one point. And I feel like I was just at a point in my life where Jude the Obscure was not the right selection of book. I was too young for it, it was boring, I didn't understand it, and I ended up really hating it. And it created this just really fraught relationship with classics for me. I decided that I did not like classics, I did not like classical authors. I didn't want to read dry, stuffy, boring stuff that was super depressing and not relative at all to my current life. So I've avoided classics like the plague for many, many years now. However, being on BookTube and interacting with so many different, really talented reviewers and readers and things like that has slowly caused me to dip my toe back into classics. And so when I saw that Misery May was coming up, I thought maybe this is the chance where I give Thomas Hardy a second shot. So I'm gonna be rereading Jude the Obscure. I remember very little about this book because it's been like 17 years at this point, and I'm hoping that I'm gonna have a much better experience reading it as an adult. So that's book number 1 for Misery May. Book number 2 is a book that has repeatedly shown up on my TBRs, but I have not managed to complete yet, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This was a Man Booker Prize and National Book Award finalist. I've heard very mixed reviews on this. A lot of people rave about this book, the emotionalness of it, the exploration of abuse and childhood neglect, and the effects of trauma in adult life. But a lot of people compare this to torture porn, and I'm not sure where I'm gonna fall on the spectrum. I do have a pretty good idea of what it's about. I think I'm gonna finally tackle it. I know it's a pretty miserable book, so I think that this will qualify well for Misery May. And speaking of classics, I happened to pick up the copy of The Plague by Albert Camus. I am hoping that I'm gonna like this one. I like a lot of apocalyptic type scenarios. I think this one sounds like it's up my alley, and it's not a super long read, only like 300 pages or so. So this will be my like introduction back into classics this month. And then a book that I did not realize was gonna be that sad, but when I started Googling, really miserable and sad books came up, and that is The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. This book follows 4 characters who receive prophecies telling them exactly when they're supposed to die and then what they do in between that prophecy up until the day that they die. Sounds really interesting. I've heard that this is very good. I love the cover of this. It's such a cool looking book. And I love the idea of being very aware of your own mortality. That idea that like knowing the day that you're gonna die would affect how you would live, because you would know exactly how much time you have to do the things you wanted to do. Curious to see where this goes. After that, I have The Attic Child by Lola J. My mom gave me this book. She recently read it and really, really loved it. She said it's one of her favorites of the year so far, that it is indeed very depressing. I know that this is a dual timeline. I believe the first timeline is set in the early 1900s and the second timeline is in the 1970s somewhere. We have two different children who have each been trapped in an attic, the same attic in fact, during their childhood. And I think some trinkets left from the first kid under some attic floorboards are a comfort to the second kid, and it kind of links their stories together. I know that this one's gonna be a dark one for me, but I'm hoping that there's like somewhat of a hopeful ending. Looking forward to getting into this. My mom and I usually have similar tastes on books, so I think I'll probably end up really liking this one as well. Now we're gonna get to the rest of the books on my TBR, and some of them may qualify for Misery May, some of them may qualify for Mental Health May, but I picked out all of them in celebration of AAPI Heritage Month. The first book on my TBR is Have You Seen These Children? A Memoir by Veronica Slaughter. This is about a family that in 1959, their 4 children sit down to have lunch with their father. And what was supposed to be just a simple afternoon visit turns into a 4-year-long life on the run, hiding as they have essentially been kidnapped, and what came after as a family. After that, I have Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagon. I found this in a little free library when I was visiting San Diego last year sometime. I looked at it because of the cover. Obviously you can see that it's really, really pretty and striking, but it's the start of a fantasy series that I've actually heard really good things about since. I don't know a whole ton about it. I do know that there's a main character named Lee, and she is of the paper caste. The reason that they're called the paper caste is because they're viewed as disposable. And she has these striking gold eyes that have attracted attention from a lot of people, including the Demon King. He, in fact, is so attracted to these golden eyes that he has her taken from her home and brought to the palace, where she is now going to be a lifelong servant in his harem. As Lee dreams of escape, she does the one thing that she's not supposed to do, and she falls in love. I wasn't sure if I was actually going to read this one or if I was going to pass it along to someone else, but I saw a couple reviews of it over the last few months that all said it was a pretty good fantasy series. So I'm gonna try this first book out and see. If I don't love the first book, then we'll let it go from there. But if it's a hit, then obviously I can pick up the next couple books in the series. And then we have Things We Lost the Water by Eric Nguyen. This follows a family of Vietnamese immigrants who have just come to New Orleans, and father is still back in Vietnam, mom is in New Orleans with the 2 kids. And she is sending back tapes and letters and all sorts of things to try to keep the family connected. But at some point she realizes that their father is probably never going to make it to the States. And I believe that as the kids grow up, there's exploration of identity, culture, sexuality, and all sorts of things like that. I've heard a lot of good things about this. I'm looking forward to getting into it. Then we have A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Rum. This book is told in dual timelines. We have 2 different young women who are dealing with the prospect of a forced marriage. The interesting part of it is that the first timeline is the grandmother and the second timeline is the granddaughter. And so I'm curious to see how, in particular, the grandmother who didn't want to be forced to get married is now in the position of having to force her granddaughter to get married. Super excited about this book. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I think it's going to be a very emotionally impactful read. Then we have Dust Child by Nguyen Phan K Mai. This was one of my most exciting releases for 2023. I read The Mountains Sing and loved that book. Such a beautiful, beautiful novel. I expect that Dust Child is going to be really good too. This follows a variety of different characters in several different timelines. We have in 1969 2 sisters who are working at a bar in Saigon, trying to support and take care of their family by working for the GIs. Decades later, we have an American veteran named Dan who returns to Vietnam with his wife Linda in the hopes that it will help him to deal with the trauma he has experienced. And we have a character named Phong who is the child of a Black American soldier and a Vietnamese woman. He was left at an orphanage and he is exploring who his family is and trying to find a way out of Vietnam. I expect that this will be beautiful. I know that this is going to be very lyrical with lovely prose and a compelling story. I can't wait to dive into it. Next up is Independence by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. This is a book about the partition of India and Pakistan. It follows 3 sisters, Priya, Deepa, and Jamini, as they get stuck on different sides of this partition and try to keep their family together. I've heard mixed reviews about it. Not necessarily that the writing itself is bad, just that it's a very short book, as you can see, and it covers a very expansive topic. I'll be interested to see what happens with it. And then I have a book called Trinity, Trinity, Trinity by Erika Kobayashi and translated from Japanese to English by Brian Bergstrom. I received this finished copy from Astra House and I'm super excited about it because I love books in translation. I'm actually going to just read you the first paragraph of the summary because I don't know if I could sum this book up any better. 9 years after the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant disaster, Japan is preparing for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. An unnamed narrator wakes up in a cold, sterile room, unable to recall her past. Across the country, the elderly begin to hear voices emanating from black stones, compelling them to behave in strange and unpredictable ways. The voices are a symptom of a disease called Trinity. I feel like this has some like apocalyptic vibes. I am here for it. It's a short book, so I feel like it's a lot of story packed into a small amount of pages. It is only about 200 pages long, so I'm looking forward to checking this one out. After that, I have Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. Let me just say, first of all, that this author has lived in so many cool places. I was reading some info on this book, and she was born in Singapore, but grew up in Japan, Russia, and the Philippines. I'm really envious. I love travel, and I have always wanted to live in different countries, so I thought that was a really cool little factoid. This book follows a character named Nikki who has spent most of her life distancing herself from her Sikh heritage. She prefers a more Western style of living, but when her father's death leaves her family cash-strapped, she takes on a job teaching creative writing to the Punjabi widows. The story really starts when one of the Sikh widows brings in a book of erotica, and Nikki realizes that the ladies she's teaching have a wealth of fantasies and life experiences. In an attempt to liberate these modest women, she teaches them how to write out their stories, but this stirs up a group of people called the Brothers who have appointed themselves as the morality police in the community, and they threaten to reveal the class's scandalous stories. Sounds amazing. This was a Reese's book club pick, and I saw this book all over Instagram a while back. I think this sounds really cute and humorous. I'm really interested in it, and I think it'll be a fun read. Then we have The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang. This, from what I understand, is a modern retelling of the Brothers Karamazov, but it features a Chinese family living in small town Wisconsin who owns an Americanized Chinese restaurant. I have not actually read the Brothers Karamazov, although I do have a copy of it on my bookshelf, so I'm curious to read this first, and then I might actually try to read that next month and kind of see how the two books compare. And then we have Bunny by Mona Awad. This book is set on a college campus. We have a young woman named Samantha who couldn't be more of an outsider. In particular, she can't stand this clique of college girls who are very twee and rich and go around calling each other Bunny. That is until she receives an invitation to their smut salon and gets to become a bunny herself. This causes her to ditch her only friend Ava and eventually brings Ava into a deadly collision with the bunnies themselves. I have yet to have read a Mona Awad book, although I have several of them sitting on my bookshelf. I hear that this is dark humor, very quirky and eccentric. I know that not everybody loves this type of writing, but I think I might, so I'm really looking forward to finally getting into this one. Then we have Burning by Megha Majumdar. This book follows three different characters. We have Jivan, a Muslim girl from the slums who's determined to move up in life. She's accused of executing a terrorist attack on a train because of a careless comment she posted on Facebook. Then we have P.T. Sir, who's an opportunistic gym teacher who hitches his aspirations to a right-wing political party and finds that his own ascent depends on Jivan's fall. And finally, we have Lovely, an irresistible outcast whose exuberant voice and dreams of Bollywood glory fill the novel with warmth and hope and humor, and who has the alibi that can set Jivan free, but it will cost her everything she holds dear. This was a read with Jenna pick. I tend to like the books that she picks for her book club, so I'm sure that I'm probably gonna like this one as well. It sounds like a really interesting concept. Then I have both The Sympathizer and The Committed by Viet Thanh Nguyen, and this follows in the first book a man who is a Vietnamese French citizen, and it's the end of the Vietnam War and he's living in America as a spy. And then we have The Committed, which follows the same gentleman now living in France and trying to deal with the repercussions of his re-education. I've heard amazing things about both of these books. They've been on my shelf for quite a while. I am very much looking forward to getting into them. After that, we have The Leavers by Lisa Ko, which won the PEN America Literary Award. And this book follows a character named Deming, and his mother, Polly. Polly is an undocumented Chinese immigrant, and one day she leaves for her job at the nail salon and never comes home. Deming is then thrust into the foster care system and eventually has an adoptive family. He struggles with maintaining the memories and culture of his mother and being forced to assimilate by his adoptive parents. I believe this story is told in dual timelines, both from Deming's POV and his mother Polly's POV. I think this is going to be really touching and interesting. I'm looking forward to it. After that, I have a book that Aardvark Book Club sent me, and that was The Dream Builders by Owendrilla Mukherjee. This book features a character named Monica Roy, who is returning to India after living in the United States with her mother for many years. When she gets there, she finds that things are not as they initially seem. Ultimately, it's going to take an unexpected tragedy for Monica and those around her to understand just how fragile life is. I believe this book is a debut novel, and it's told from 10 different perspectives. I love this cover, and I can't wait to read this. I get super excited about debut authors because it's always, like, am I gonna find a new author that I really love? So we'll see how this goes. And then we have Babel, An Arcane History by R.F. Kuang. This is a book that I have been looking forward to reading for quite a while. It is dark academia, but it deals a lot with colonialism, race, politics, things like that. I love this. So a lot of the times I feel like dark academia features students, but usually like rich upper crust white students at like Yale or Harvard. I love that this features a more diverse cast. It doesn't skip over colonialism and ugly history around universities. And I think that there is some magical realism elements that are tied in. I loved Kuang's Poppy War trilogy. I'm sure I'm gonna love this one as well. And as I mentioned in the ARC part of this video, Angie Kim was going to be popping up again in this TBR, and that's because I have a copy of Miracle Creek. This is a courtroom thriller about a young immigrant family where the mother is accused of killing her autistic son. I've heard good things about this book. I don't know a whole ton about it though, and I love a good courtroom thriller. I'm really interested to see where this one goes. And then we have The Night Tiger by Yangji Chu. I'm going to just read the synopsis on this one. Quick-witted, ambitious Ji Lin is stuck as an apprentice dressmaker, moonlighting as a dance hall girl to help pay off her mother's mahjong debts. But when one of her dance partners accidentally leaves behind a gruesome souvenir, Ji Lin plunges into a dark adventure, a mirror world of secrets and superstitions. 11-year-old Chinese houseboy Ren also has a secret, a promise he must fulfill to his dead master. To find his master's severed finger and bury it with his body. Ren has 49 days to do so, or his master's soul will wander the earth forever. So we have these two characters and their stories are going to intertwine, and I've heard really good things about this. This was a Reese's Book Club pick. I think it was also a Book of the Month selection. And finally, we have Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This book follows the Richardson family who is renting out some properties. And then we have Mia Warren and her daughter Pearl who end up renting one of the Richardson's homes. Mia and Pearl become very close with the Richardson family and are more than just tenants. When old family friends of the Richardsons attempt to adopt an American Chinese baby, a custody battle splits the town in half. Mia and Elena end up on opposite sides of this picture, and Elena becomes obsessed with Mia's motives. She's determined to uncover Mia's past, but that's gonna come with an unplanned cost. I've heard a lot of amazing things about this book. I've never read any of Celeste Ng's work before, so this will be my first time. I'm looking forward to it. So those are all of my possible reads for the month of May. I am beyond excited for this TBR. There are so many good books, so many amazing authors. I think this is really well balanced too. We have some fantasy, we have some humor, we have some historical fiction, we have some contemporary fiction, literary fiction. So I'm pretty excited by how varied the genres are on this TBR. It's gonna be a lot of fun for me getting to read all over the place like this. So that being said, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know what you're reading in the month of May. Do you have a specific readathon that you're reading for, a specific theme that you're reading? Do you have any books picked out? If you're kind of more of a pants reader, let me know. Do you have any inkling at all of what you're gonna read? And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as that notification bell so that you never miss a video, and that way we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.